Crossed. Hey everyone, welcome
Hello.
to another edition of at 8 p.m. but 7 p.m. podcast.
All my fault, except for responsibility.
There's a crowdfunding for Lisa to get a PA. So if you are interested, hit me up and we can get Lisa a PA. But yeah,
We need two because of the emotional distress that one will have to, suffer.
yeah, you're good. Yeah, so it's been an interesting month. Yeah, I mean, a lot going on. You've been busy as well.
Yep.
You got a new toy.
Yes, I have a new car. Very cool. I like
Tell us
it.
about it. Tell us all about it.
So, yeah, I just decided I'm just going to treat myself and do it. But it's a complete thug. I didn't realize. And so when I bought it, I sort of was like, oh, I need like the sports package and I need like all the, no, you don't. Because if you put the sports mode on, you'll kill yourself, everybody else, and probably get arrested. That's like an optimal outcome from using sports mode. So it was a bit of a waste of money buying sports mode because you don't need it, but it's awesome and I love it. And I haven't named her yet. So if you have suggestions, I guess put them in the chat. I don't know. That's what people seem to do on YouTube. So put everything in the chat for literally no reason whatsoever.
Call a Zoom, something like that. I'm very imaginative.
You might need to enable the chat, actually. It says sending messages is only supported for hosts.
Yeah, so I think that's us. So they should be able to chat via Twitch or
okay.
LinkedIn.
I trust you.
YouTube. I hope. I'm just double checking. Oh, I was wondering where the sound was coming from. It's YouTube or Twitch. I'm getting lost with myself. So,
your audio
and I'm fairly
strange. Yeah, your audio now has also gone strange.
There we go. That should hopefully be better. Sorry.
There we go.
Hang on. Okay, I think I have it. It's just so I can see the chat messages on Twitch. I think. Oh, there we go. All right, so we should be good now.
Hopefully.
Oh my god. Horrible story. Don't do something that you'd think would be like a few minutes before you do a podcast because you end up rushing. But yeah, so awesome news on the car. It's exciting.
And you've also got a new toy, which is sitting behind you.
That thing there. I'm getting into space. Yeah, like I think this is probably a good opportunity to kick off one of the topics that we were going to talk about. So yeah, I got myself a telescope. I enjoy photography. I've always wanted to like shoot space stuff. So yeah, I tried the other night with a cheapy telescope that I have. It was horrible. Like you're trying to aim for the moon and you don't actually realize how fast the moon moves. And then you try to find it. Oh, it moves fast. And then you're trying to find it and you miss it. And it was just horrible. So I got a decent telescope that tracks and all that stuff, which you kind of need for astrophotography. So you can get the light and track it and all that. And see the thing that you're trying to look at.
Helps, right? Otherwise, it's just a picture of blackness, which not so great to look at.
I'm not lying. I spent like the whole night trying to track the moon. It was horrible. But yeah, I think that's the important thing that we want to speak about is having hobbies outside of your work. So in our case, InfoSec.
Yeah.
It's a tricky one because many people are like InfoSec is their hobby as well. So I don't quite agree with, oh, you shouldn't, if you're an infosec, you shouldn't do infosec in your spare time or free time. My view is you should do whatever makes you happy and gets you away and unwinds you and all that kind of stuff. That's the most important thing. Not what you do, but what makes you happy. What helps you unwind, de-stress, all that stuff.
Yeah, I agree to an extent. So I do a lot of climbing, and I also do a lot of aerial circus as well. And in both situations, obviously there's the activity itself, which is really great. But the other thing that I found is actually better than the activity in some ways is the contact with the people who aren't in cyber and talking about things that aren't related to cybersecurity and paranoia and risk and all these things that we always, a lot of my cyber friends, it often drifts inevitably into cyber related topics, whether you like it or not. And I find it's actually really helped my mental health to talk to people who literally do not care less about cybersecurity at all. Because I realize how much I talk about updates and passwords and all this stuff that comes into everything I talk about. And they just say, like, Lisa, we don't care, like, shut up. And it's like, oh God, I'm that person. So actually, I think it's really healthy.
That's a fair point. I've not thought of that way before. It's definitely a fair point. I suppose networking with people outside of your little circle or bubbles is good. Understand what's going out in the world beyond your bubble. I always talk about people in cybersecurity often think in their bubbles or react in their bubbles. And it is important to understand what other people's perceptions.
Yeah, and I think we're really paranoid as a community, which we have to be, right? Because all we deal with is, indicators of compromise, attacks, suspected attacks, data breaches, lying, manipulation. That's our whole world. That's everything we focus on. So inevitably that makes you really paranoid and makes you probably, if we're being brutally honest, have a very distorted perception of reality, kind of in the opposite direction to the average person who underestimates it, maybe.
Yeah, I can certainly see that. Like, you do different things. Like, just recently I was trying to sign up for a car lease, and I'm like, is this person phoning me after I phoned them legitimate? I'm giving them my banking details, those kind of things. Like, are they trying to scam me? So yeah, I totally get that. And it's something that you can't just switch off. Well, I guess having those hobbies and that kind of gets you away from it. It doesn't necessarily mean you switch off, but it kind of removes you from it in some sense.
Yeah, I think that's why, and I guess photography is kind of the same. I gravitate towards hobbies that are very consuming mentally. So climbing is incredibly about mental focus, and you can't be thinking about other things. So aerial circus is the same. It's incredibly physically demanding. It's a bit dangerous. So it's very focused. And I guess photography is very the same. And I think in a way, when you have very stressful jobs, you gravitate towards those kinds of hobbies because it forces your brain to get out of, oh God, everyone's data's gone or whatever, which is most of your life otherwise.
Yeah, for me, photography has actually been something. So I started off photography years and years ago, probably more than 10 years ago. And I got into it, and then life got in the way, kids, all of that kind of thing. And I just lost interest. And then at the beginning of the year, kicked off again. And it's really beneficial because it gets you away from the computer. It helps motivate you to get outside, fresh air, all that, as well as, like, as you said, getting your mental thinking outside. So, like, for me, like, the creativity in that. I'm not going to claim to be the world's best photographer in that. I'm not. I try. I try hard. That's about.
That's all we can ask for.
But it does. It just kind of gives you a different way of thinking, and you get away and ignore some things for a while, like
Yeah.
jobs and other stresses. And it's not just job stresses that you got to get away from sometimes.
No, totally. I mean, my personal life hasn't been great over the last couple years, really. It's been very stressful. And, you know, I'm not necessarily hugely comfortable and happy. And I love my work, I absolutely adore my work. But the problem very quickly becomes that my life becomes my work, because that's my like happy space. And so I've got to be very careful, because our jobs are really stressful. And I was actually asked this question on Blue Sky the other day, which was like, how do you identify when you're very stressed? What are your precursors to thinking, oh, hold on? And I think I said this to you. It's for me, it's like when I put the microwave on, it makes me cry or something, and I hear the noise and I'm like, I can't deal with it. I'm just and I'm like, okay, Lisa, you're really stressed. Like, you need to chill out a little bit, because this isn't something we can deal with long term. But it's interesting, because some people on Blue Sky were saying like they eat more, their diet changes, they don't sleep so well. What were some of the things? Irritability, like being very irritable with everything that happens, crying at TV programs that aren't really that sad. And all of these little things are quite interesting, because they're kind of telling us, our body's sort of saying to us, you're not actually okay. I'm just kind of giving you a little IOC. There's something not quite wrong inside our body.
Yeah, exactly. And I, at the beginning of last year, went through an incredibly stressful period. It's not pleasant at all. I was literally sick one night. I was shivering, cold sweats. Like, it is horrible, horrible, horrible place to be. And it often isn't just a switch. It doesn't just go one day, yeah, I'm happy, and the next day, oh, I'm off 100% stress. It's a build-up. So it is important to note those things before it gets to that point, because it's a horrible place to be. Thankfully, it didn't escalate further than that. I just took the week off from work, and that it was just, but it's not a period in my life that I would ever want to repeat again.
Yeah. And I think that's the key as well. Like, if you spot it early, like you sound like you sort of did, you've got an opportunity to correct it with a week off or whatever, right? But I know people who have gone further and have ended up having to take a year plus off, because they are so overworked and overstressed and burnt out. And when that happens, it's not like, oh, I'll take a week's holiday and I'll be fine. You know, that's a lot of work, and you have to change your lifestyle. So it's, I think, something we've got to be more aware of, and working out in ourselves, like, oh, you know, I'm not behaving how I usually would behave. Maybe this is something I need to, you know, take stock of.
Yeah, definitely. So, moral of the story, get out, do some stuff that you enjoy, fun stuff that gets you away from everyday life type thing. And yeah, it also, I think the important thing is, like, sometimes, or often, it has a cost associated with it, and that's even the stress itself. But at the same time, is the cost of burning yourself out and being off for like a year more than some of that stuff you get to help enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
Like, it's pointless trying to squirrel away money and be miserable than like spending a bit of money and being happy and that kind of thing, I guess. It's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, I agree. And I sort of I actually follow this climber on Instagram, and he's like a climber and he does videos and stuff. And he wrote a post and he said that he works to live. And I thought, actually, if you reframe everything in that context, that like, yes, we love our jobs. Yes, we feel really passionate about making the world more secure, blah, 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 blah. But ultimately, you need to be working to live, because if you're doing the opposite situation, your life is your life. And like, once it's gone, it's gone. So a lot of you will know who follow me on Instagram that a week or two ago, I had a cancer scare, and I had a doctor tell me that basically, like, pretty certain it was cancer, skin cancer, sent me to the hospital for an emergency procedure and like a test. And that weekend was like hell for me, absolute hell. I was convinced, because this GP had said that this is what had happened. I was convinced this is what it was. And I was thinking about like, well, you know, if you're faced with this sort of question, like, have I really lived the maximum I would want? And then I sort of thought, oh, you know, maybe I haven't. And I think there's like this phrase that I heard someone say, which is like, live like you were dying, which I think is actually like, it's morbid, but it's also really apt. That if you think about your life and, you know, if there was some sort of time limit on it, well, there is a time limit on it. If there was an immediate time limit on it, would you feel like you were really maximizing that time? Because you don't get it back. Once it's gone, it's gone. And it's easy to push it to the side, but then at some point we are all going to get that piece of news.
Yep. Very, very true. Thankfully, it all worked out for you.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot that bit. I just kind of left it on a cliffhanger. No, it was all fine. The doctor got it wrong, and I'm absolutely fine. I forgot to add the really critical.
That's the good news part of it. The happy news, not the.
That is a classic Lisa thing to do. I completely forgot that I just left it at a cliffhanger. Thanks for reminding me. Okay.
That's good. It's life is difficult. I'm sure we've all gone through different things in our own experiences. So yeah, look after yourself. Invest in yourself. That's the important thing. You never know what the next tomorrow will bring.
Yeah.
And that could literally happen and change overnight, unfortunately. So yeah, let's move on to the next topic, which I forgot what that was.
There were like several, weren't there, that came in?
I know. I'm sorry. I apologize.
I know what it was. And it actually links into this conversation because we're talking about death. So there was loads of news articles in the last couple of weeks, certainly since we did the last episode of this podcast, about how AI is going to be the death of humans. It's going to wipe out the world. Kittens are going to die. Puppies are going to explode. AI is going to kill us all. And that's what's happening. And there was a story that was sort of the kind of peak of it almost, which was AI drone kills operator. And the actual story, when you got down into it, was not only did that not happen, but it wasn't even a simulation. It was a thought experiment that they talked through, where they suggested that potentially the AI might kill its own operator. But the media spun it as AI kills operator. Anyway, that was the segue into our topic of, is AI the end of the world?
It's like I saw the other day on Twitter, someone going, AR for the stop saw, which basically detects the electrical current in your fingers and it stops the saw like before, chop it off. And it's been around for decades. But hey, now we can put AR in front of it and make it all fancy.
Yeah.
And someone called them out. It's like, yeah, it's not AR, it's just using physics.
Yeah.
Oh, but it's AR that detects like how much current's now. Stop, please.
Yeah,
I gotta be careful here because my company works with AI and machine learning. That's the other problem is machine learning and AI are two different things.
Yes,
it's called AI. AI is like simple if-else statements. Machine learning uses models and all that kind of thing.
Yes,
and don't get me wrong, like machine learning and all that does have its place. It does have its uses. Like the company I work for, it's incredibly important. It helps combat financial fraud and that kind of thing, which is noble, and it helps prevent crime and all that kind of stuff. And it works. We just got to stop saying everything's going to be AI and it's going to take over the world, and just put AI in front of it. It's going to solve all the problems. It drives me nuts. And the thing about AI taking over people's jobs as well is I don't see it happening. Like the way I see AI is like robots, right? It will impact people's jobs. So it will make people more efficient. So therefore you're going to need less people, but it's not going to just be suddenly we're going to replace all of these people with AI. Like it will impact jobs, but it's not going to take over everyone's jobs. What will happen is less people will be needed to do the same job function, and that's the way I see it happen. It's the same as robots. That's what happened with robots. Robots didn't replace all the humans in a factory. It just means we have less humans in the factory. They're
And
still
go back
needed.
one stage further, people said that would be the situation with the internet and computers, that people would lose their jobs. And it just probably changes the jobs, right? Like the
Yeah.
jobs you do are not necessarily the same, but there's still a demand for jobs. And this also happens, I think it's portrayed as basically happening within a year. This doesn't happen in a year. This happens like 10, 50, maybe a lifetime even of gradual change and gradual shifting across into other roles. But economies could never survive if people weren't working. So it doesn't make any sense, even on a macroeconomic scale, because AI doesn't pay tax. So it wouldn't even be allowed to happen because countries wouldn't have any money.
Yet.
Yet, yeah. Oh God, yeah. Well, then you can just add the word "yet" onto like any sentence that I say from now on. Then.
But the other thing is, like, AI isn't something new. It's been around for decades. Like machine learning, that's not something. It's only really with the I think the kind of defining moment was ChatGPT. That's when I really saw things like ramp up in the machine learning AI front. Like ever since that came out, it's now the thing.
Yeah.
Where it's gonna go, don't know. It's definitely become a huge marketing thing. So if you are interested, we are starting our own AR thing that we haven't thought about, but it's AR. And
it's going to change the world and kill all the kittens.
Yep.
Basically the goal.
Yeah. Be there for the mouse. Stop the cats killing the mouse or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just crazy. Yeah.
But I think it like I think it also, it's kind of on both sides of the spectrum. So we had this discussion on Twitter with a bunch of people, and basically I think like the tech, I'm going to call them the tech bros, the tech bros of Silicon Valley, very much everything's AI is amazing, AI is going to change the world, it's got AI, the future is AI, blah 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 blah. Then on the other side of the fence, you've got like the conspiracy theorist, panicky people who are going, oh my God, AI is going to kill everyone. And you've basically got these two groups of delusional people facing off against each other in this like bizarre situation. And no one's in the middle saying like, this isn't, neither are reality. Like it's not going to change the world. And it's also not going to kill kittens. So let's just all have a beer and just chill out a little bit for a second.
Yeah, some of the things I put in ChatGPT, I'm not worried
I'm not
at all.
We got this for at least another 30 years. We're fine for at least that period of time. Like, it's not that, because that's the thing, right? Like, as you were saying about the difference between machine learning and AI, like really, it's not AI. LLMs are not. Oh God, I can't even say it. LLMs are not AI, and they're not even that good, to be honest. Like I know everyone was raving about them. Like they were mediocre. I wouldn't say they were like the biggest revolution in technology in recent times at all.
Yeah, it's just marketing. We saw it with blockchain. We saw it with NFT. NFT. Yeah, what happened with that? That's kind of.
I mean, cryptocurrency is changing the world. It's just changing it for the worse, which we didn't really realize. But I mean, they were right. It is changing the world, just not in a good way.
Yeah, not exactly the way of expecting.
Yeah,
criminals are happy with it though.
They are. They are very happy with it. And that's another point, really. I suppose that every technology has its limitations. And for cryptocurrency, I think it's really struggled to get any mainstream adoption. It's got its cult-like following, which is very loyal, and it's got its criminal following, which is very loyal. But mainstream people are not using it as a currency day to day, which was the ultimate goal. And it has sort of failed, I would say.
Well, when you got people who aren't willing to just use a normal debit card and want to deal in hard cash, Yeah, good luck trying to convince them to use cryptocurrency.
Good luck trying to convince people like me who rely on Apple Pay. Like, super easy. I don't know why I need to do cryptocurrency. Apple pays for everything.
You're going to get the big dorky glasses.
Oh, gosh, the glasses. 2 hours. 2 hours of battery time for what, $4,000 or something? I don't know what it was. It was like a lot of money.
That's a bargain. $2,000 an hour. Bargain.
I mean, I'm not going to buy it. Okay. I'm not going to commit to saying I'm not going to buy it, but I am going to slag it off consistently, even after I've probably bought it as well. Okay.
Fair enough. But then, wait, there will be a battery pack.
They will.
For another grand.
And you have to put it in a rucksack because it's so large.
10 grand later, yeah, I got my headset.
It's portable.
Oh my god! And then I saw like the most expensive Apple you can get out is like 60 grand. I almost had a heart attack. I was like, what?
What do you think like the real use case for it is? I mean, obviously, like the techie geeks, you know, love it. But like, what's the real use case for AR glasses?
Techie geeks. Like, I mean,
Because I thought like Google Maps maybe. Like if you're walking in, say, London, and like for me as a woman, I don't necessarily want to walk with my phone in my hand because it's kind of like a bit dodgy. But then I've got these weird glasses on my face.
Yeah, you just
like I'm pretty conspicuous.
Yeah.
I look like I'm less aware of my surroundings with these damn glasses on. So I don't really understand what the purpose of it all is.
It's techie gimmick. And Apple being Apple will sell it because the following. Yeah, it'll be interesting. Like, see how it comes out. See if things like battery life and that improve. But really, I think the cool thing is, it actually kind of goes to our first point. Like, I could see you using it as like a help mentally to get away to some place. Like some of it, like really cool. You can look around, you be in a totally different place. Maybe that would be cool. So if you're like flying and maybe even scared of flying, you can put that on, get away. Not literally, but like just get away in that space and forget that you're even in a plane or something. Maybe, but it's still quite expensive to do that.
It is. I think it's actually cheaper to go on a plane. To just book a flight would probably be cheaper than to buy the Apple product, but I don't know.
Yeah, I look like a dog for 2 hours.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I can't get over those glasses. They just look cheesy.
They look awful and they're massive. And I read an Economist article on it, and they said it's actually quite interesting to see what happens here because Apple very rarely release a product that isn't really fine-tuned, basically completely perfect with like a really clear use case. Like Apple, that's been what their MO has been for a very long time. And this really deviates from that because the use case isn't really that clear. The product is kind of, it's done, but it definitely got some really big issues with it. And that's all quite unlike Apple. So we'll see what it does. I don't know. I think maybe V2 will be what you buy, not V1.
Yeah. What's kind of like the Google glasses that came and disappeared. It never became a thing. Oh well, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
Right,
maybe in like 6 months' time, we'll be doing this with Apple glasses.
Yeah,
it will all be virtual.
Exactly. All right. See what other topics there were. As you can see, we are very well prepared as always. All right, so here we go. Okay, so we covered the Apple Vision Pro. Ice climbing.
We're talking about ice climbing.
That was one of the things. Apple Vision Pro and ice climbing.
Oh yeah, I think someone suggested ice climbing. I don't really know why people want me to talk about ice climbing, but yeah. You want a distraction? I recommend ice climbing. That you will not think about any of your other life problems at the point you are climbing a vertical waterfall with ice axes. I guarantee you won't remember you have problems. So it's like the ultimate therapist. There you go.
I could never do that because I'm afraid of heights and I would never leave the ground. So.
But yeah, well, that would be a big prohibitive thing, really, if you were scared of heights, I think.
Yeah, that's why I'll never attempt it. I'm perfectly happy to stand on the ground and watch people going up.
There you go.
So there was one, and I think we're gonna have to go here and talk about his Move It thing.
Yay.
So sounds really enthralled by it. So there's two angles to this. Is like one is obviously the Move It thing, but I think the bigger thing around it is the 0 days. Do they appear to be happening more, or rather being exploited more? And do companies actually do the right thing when this kind of news comes out? So, like, one of the things I put on Twitter is like, here's another vulnerability. Organizations seem to be not learning from the past. These major significant vulnerabilities come out. Like, sign up to the CISA known exploits. Like, if anything on there comes about, you should immediately drop what you're doing and patch it. Like, those are actively being exploited. So whether that's happened in the case of these organizations that were breached, BA, well, as far as I understand, maybe BA is a bit unfair because they had a third party, as it was pointed out to me. Yeah, I can see the argument being made for there, but things like Boots, BBC, that kind of thing, like, did they fail their users and customers? How many other orgs are going to fail and not patch on time?
Yeah, I think it highlights for me my big thing from this, coming at the angle that I look at cyber from, is a couple of things. Firstly, it like really highlights the importance of doing due diligence on suppliers, because Boots, BA, BBC, Aer Lingus, their involvement in this comes from Zellis, which is the payroll company who in turn came from Move It. And, you know, the problem here is that these companies, these suppliers get compromised, and it's not technically the fault, I suppose, of BA, Boots, whatever, but it very much sits within your incident response responsibility. So you still have to stand up your IR teams. You still have to put out comm statements. You have to expend cash. You have to look at resourcing call centers to handle complaints and queries, credit monitoring for staff effect. All of this has to still happen from you. So it almost doesn't matter that it came from Move IT and Zellis. It's on you. And so I think what it really highlights for me is that when you're looking at your incident response, when you're looking at planning for an attack, if you are not considering your supply chain and you're not considering breaches or outages that come from really key suppliers, you are going to be walking into really serious trouble. And that, for me, this case basically highlights that with a massive highlighter pen.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, people see BA, Boots, BBC. They don't see the third party. So I forgot the name, but the customers as well. They're not going to care. It's like, oh, I have my data to you. You breach my data. Like, whether it's a third party or not, you have my data. You lost it. Your responsibility.
Yeah. And I think this doesn't just stop at breaches of data. You know, like the financial services world, very much heavily bringing in, both in the EU and in the UK, regulation to look at how you handle suppliers of critical business services. So let's say you use AWS. If in this absolute worst case scenario, AWS went down, completely offline, what would happen to your company? What would happen to your critical business services? Because if they cease completely and you have no backup, your business is finished. Not because of anything you necessarily did, but because of them. And so if you don't think about not only the breach of the data, but also thinking about like, well, what happens if they just had this horrendous IT outage and it wasn't even a cyber attack? What would happen? Because you wouldn't have any capability to carry on.
Yep. And that's interesting as we move into cloud and SaaS-based offerings. There's always that kind of all your eggs in one basket type thing. Certainly in the cases of like AWS, where you're suddenly putting your entire data center really in many cases into AWS. And it's not just AWS, you're talking about different regions where a region could go down. Thankfully, they do have things like multi-site capabilities, but again, those are things you get to plan and do around. So yeah, so supply chain stuff is really important. And I think when many people look at it, they don't see that kind of view. They just see, okay, my own little bubble. We've done this checkbox exercise when we first onboarded them. We don't need to worry about that ever again. Like many people don't realize that all this stuff is a continuous thing. You have to be constantly reviewing suppliers, the services, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think for some it doesn't matter, because for some suppliers, they're not touching your critical data and your personal data. They're not touching your business critical systems or running those business critical systems. So in some respects, it's less important. You can perhaps be a bit more laissez-faire with those suppliers. But if they are running or operating critical business services, or they have access to sensitive personal data, it's brave to say they're not your responsibility, especially when you look at cases like this, because for BA, Boots, BBC, Aer Lingus, all of these companies, this is a nightmare. This is an absolute nightmare. It's all over the news. They've been dragged into a breach that they didn't technically cause or were responsible for. And it's an absolute nightmare.
Yep. And even the breach itself, it's difficult to say, because so the supplier for MOVEit put out a advisory on the 31st of March.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, not March, May. I only managed to get a patch, when I say only, 3 days later. You're talking about an extremely short time period where this could effectively be exploited by attackers. But the question is also, did those attackers know about this before this advisory? Because it says the advisory came from the vendor. So did the vendor find it and then give information about it, and the attackers used that? Or did the attackers do it before and that's how the vendor found out? I don't know. If anyone knows, please shout. I suspect it's probably they were being attacked and the vendor then found out that way. But even still, it shows you how incredibly short these periods between the vulnerability being found and attackers leveraging it is becoming now.
Yeah, and just because they issue a patch or an advisory doesn't mean everyone's applying that. So what's the time frame between that patch being issued and applied? Because that could then be 2 weeks, easy.
And that's my worry. And that's kind of where I was trying to go with that tweet. Is like, we know these things happen. We know how bad some of these. Like, look at TravelX. It was one of the biggest contributing factor. One of the biggest contributing factor. It wasn't the reason the company went under, but it certainly had a big impact in why that company went into administration.
Yep.
So those who don't know, TravelX didn't patch the Pulse VPN server, and the attackers compromised that, and then the company couldn't operate for like 2 weeks, which is not good for a company. And it also left people high and dry because they were overseas. They couldn't do the travel exchange, and they were basically screwed. So it's not just the company suffering; it's also individuals. It has an impact on real people.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that aspect as well. It's just,
and I think there's a term in financial services that has been employed a lot, which is, instead of using like maximum tolerable downtime as a measure for like how long something can be down, they use like intolerable harm threshold. So that is time related as well, but it's also harm related. So it's like, at what point do consumers or people suffer so much harm that we no longer have an ability to recover from it, which, you know, is a little bit different from a time-based metric. And I've asked this of lots of clients that I've had, and I've said, well, you know, what's the maximum time that this could be down, or what's the maximum amount of harm that you could sustain before that would be unfeasible to be able to recover? And people don't know. And I think if you don't know how long your services can be down for, I don't know. I think you're asking for trouble.
I mean, how do you even measure that?
Well, I guess, like, for example, investment banks, it would be very short. So it'd probably be like a couple hours max. Whereas, like, for a big factory, maybe it would be weeks, because they might have lots of stock and they could do things manually. So potentially they could go on longer without IT services. But like an investment bank, it would be hours, because after a couple hours, your live data, your live trading data would be so out of date, you wouldn't be able to recover that. So it depends on the company, I guess. But I think you definitely need to be thinking about how long could something be completely inaccessible before really you have to look at shutting the doors.
Yeah. And then the other thing is fines. Like someone mentioned GDPR is going to impact these companies. And my argument to that is that one of the companies involved already had a GDPR fine. It was supposed to be significant, and it got squashed for reasons. I just think we're now at a point where fines aren't enough. Like we've seen time and time again, like companies will just pay up the fine and moving on. There's things like Facebook, and they got a huge $1 billion fine or something like that not so long ago. I think it was Meta. And it just, I don't think fines are the answer. And also fines are after the fact. Like people's lives have been impacted. Go look at that incident down in Australia, where people had to start queuing for new passports. That's people's times, their own personal time, that through no fault of their own, now they have to go stand in the queue and get a new passport, and it's the stress and all that. Why should people pay for service and then have to suffer? Like fines aren't going to fix that. Equifax, you get $1 check for thanks for coming. He has $1 check.
But also, I think, like, I said this before, companies, they hedge their bets with this. They put money aside. Like in financial services, they'll be putting money aside for fraud fines. Like they are putting money aside for a rainy day. So it's not that effective. It's not really a punishment. It might not even come your way. You could definitely negotiate it down. I think the bigger thing that is a problem, and I know from my work, is that the cost of managing an incident and recovering from an incident is absolutely monumental. And that doesn't even cover the lawsuits and class actions that could come your way from customers. That cost is going on for years, and your actual profit margins will need to be significantly revised for a couple of years. And if you're in a very competitive marketplace like the tech sector, you're not going to survive that.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, Equifax, when I saw the cost, it was like $1.2 billion or something across the company.
And that's enormous. Like you're never going to get a fine anywhere near that.
No, definitely not. I don't even know what the fine was, but it was like that cost obviously includes the fines, but it's still a huge number to go to your board and go, yeah, by the way, we lost the company this amount of money. I'd be very happy. Yeah, and the other thing I'm curious about fines, because we never see this, and maybe it's just my ignorance, is what happens to that money? Like, so a company gets fined, where does that money go? It's certainly not going back to those that are really affected by it. It doesn't seem to be going back to, like, let's take this money and improve security throughout the whole. So is it just going back to the governments and spending on whatever?
I think the ICO in the UK are self-funded. So I think, and I could be completely wrong, but I think that money goes into their funding, which sort of feels a bit like a conflict of interest to me, to be perfectly honest. But hey ho, maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe they're not self-funded, but I thought they had some sort of funding situation like that. but I don't know. But then I also read about the class action lawsuits, and obviously in the UK, you don't actually need to prove that you suffered harm. You just need to prove that you suffered like distress from the attack to claim against the company. Now, you may only get 250 quid, let's say, 250 pounds, 250 euros, whatever. But if you then have 1 million customers, 250 euros per customer times 1 million, that's a big problem. That's a big payout now.
$250 million. So, yep. Oh, I don't know if we lost Lisa.
Oh,
There
so
we go.
that's a lot of.
Weird things going on with computers.
Yeah, I was just getting hacked. Some Dan Card was sending me ransomware, and it just gets. He does it every now and again. It's fine.
Damn him. We'll get the Russian gangs onto him.
Yeah, it's true. I'm not entirely. I would never be entirely convinced if he wasn't already onto them, to be honest. So we'll see.
But yeah, so that's an interesting one, and definitely around third-party vendors and that. And that's kind of also one thing I want to say about third-party stuff, because I've been dealing with this. Is if you look at like the supply chain in terms of code and that, it is incredibly difficult to figure out what the heck is going on. You go read vulnerability on this one thing, it says this, and you go read on another database, it says that, and then you got this database and that database and this database. And I think that's partly one of the problems that we face, is there's just so much disjointed information and relevant information. Like, how do I work out how this affects my organization? Where you get like a one-line vulnerability description. Like, great. This is going to be fun to try to figure out.
And how do you prioritize? Because that's another thing. You've got to prioritize according to both likelihood and severity, right? Because that's how we measure risk. So you're putting up the most likely and the most severe. But then how do you prioritize some of the others? Because it's not always the situation where it's nice and tidy and you've got one issue to fix. That's very rare.
Oh, the volume. My volume seems to come and go. I'll try to speak closer to the mic. Apologies. That's probably my mic. So I think one of the things is that combining things like your CVSS score. Oh, shock horror. I'll probably... The thing about CVSS, everyone focuses on the score. Don't focus on the score. Focus on the vector. That will tell you how that vulnerability impacts your organization. And then combining that with things like EPSS, which is your exploits scoring system. Again, it's not perfect, but it then can give you a very strong likelihood of how likely that is to be exploited. And then throwing in things like the CISA 9x vulnerability exploits. There's also something really interesting happening this year. CVSS v4 is coming out. And there's some things around like likelihood in that coming in there. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out and how well that will adapt to having better, more accurate scoring. And also, final thing, score things to your organization. Don't just take the current CVSS score and go, it's a 10. You need to adapt it to your organization.
Yeah.
It could be a 10, it could be a 5, or depends. Context is really important.
Yeah, and I think even outside of that, I spoke to a couple of CISOs and I said, realistically, what do you think costs your company the most money from this kind of perspective? And they said accidental data loss. People sending data they shouldn't send to people that aren't the right recipient. That's the biggest cost. And it's not a cyber attack and it's not sexy. It's not like this super efficient, 0-day exploit by some APT somewhere. But to not focus on that when that's the biggest cost, that's just dumb. That's just stupid. And I think that's the problem also, when we have an exciting exploit or we have an exciting attack that happens that uses something sexier and uses something that's like a 0-day, or it's done by like, I don't know, Fancy Bears, or what's the Iranian one called? It's called like Cozy Kittens or something. Anyway, something like that. When it's done by something like that, it's really exciting, and we all get like, yeah, this is amazing. Like, look at this. It's so scary. We should all do this stuff. But in reality, I sort of feel like for a lot of organizations, that's a waste of time. And you're distracting them from things that actually could make a tangible difference by talking about what Fancy Bears are doing or what KillNet is doing, which isn't that useful.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like, I don't want to sound, I'm scared to say this, I'll probably get shouted at, but humans are the weakest link. Like, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I don't be like, oh, your employees are useless. No. It's just humans are easy to manipulate. Humans aren't robots. We have lapses in judgment. We make mistakes.
Yeah.
If anyone's going to target an organization, humans will be the easier target because attackers know that. They know the things that they can use to their advantage. And humans are always going to have weaknesses.
And that means, just to interject, that means your end users, but it also means you on your security team. And it means me, and it means you, Sean. We're all subject to making mistakes and being manipulated and lied to and conned. If you look at my previous relationship history, you'll know I'm very liable to be manipulated and lied to and conned. So, I mean, we're not picking on the end users. We're saying, like, all of us collectively.
No, I'm perfect. I'm
apart from Sean, who's perfect and makes no mistakes. Apart from that one cryptocurrency scam you fell for, but that wasn't your fault.
Yeah, we're good on there. No, it's joking aside. Like, no one's perfect. Like, absolutely not. And that's why I say humans are everyone in an organization. I've clicked on a phishing link for a phishing exercise, looked legitimate, wasn't concentrating. Like, I stopped. But it happens. That's all it takes. And that's why I say cybersecurity is not, it's a technology and human problem. You have to cater for both. Without catering for both, you're going to have problems. So, yeah.
And I think a really good example of that actually is in the UK. Many years ago, we had this British Transport Police campaign, which was, I think it's See It, Say It, Sort It or something.
Oh, God. What do you mean many years?
Like,
it's
still going on. Yeah, they're still doing it, but it started many years ago in response to like the terrorist threat. And what they wanted to do was get members of the public to start spotting odd luggage in stations and report it. So they came up with this. I mean, we're in the UK, so the UK has to have a 3-point slogan for bloody everything. It can't be anything other. It has to be 3 points. Like, it's just the way for some reason we do things. But they had real difficulty. No one reported anything. People would walk past suitcases that had been completely left abandoned in a station and just ignore it. And so the security issue, the human issue, isn't even that specific to cyber. It's physical security. We just ignore everything basically because most of the time we're walking around like this. So no, we don't see the back because we're scrolling Instagram. So, humans.
It's also human. Like it might feel like you're tittle-tatting or you're too timid or shy to report it. So, same as like things like, organization tailgating and that kind of thing. Oh, I'm not going to go question someone because I don't trust them, and what are they going to think? They're going to think I'm a nasty person for doing that. So, I'm just going to do the easy route and let them in. Or someone's asking for this information, I need to get it right away. I might get in trouble. I'm going to take the easy route.
Yeah. And it's not a problem that we've solved in any sphere. Like, we never got it right. We never got people reporting tailgating. We never got people reporting luggage in stations and airports. Like, we haven't solved how you do it yet. And so that translates to cyber, where we're still clicking on phishing links.
Yep. So, human problem as well. And
maybe we should all move to AI. I see, full circle. Back to the start.
Next episode, Sean will be replaced by some AI.
That would be quite fun, actually. I'd be interested to see that. Speaking of AI, one quick anecdote. I I created a voice skin of myself. And I did this experiment and I created it. Oh my God, it takes hours for a start. It takes, like, if you think it's going to be like quick, it's not. It's like 5 hours of recording random sentences.
Oh God.
And then I decided to call some of my friends who weren't in cyber and play it, and you can type messages and it will say stuff. So I left voice notes because it's not very good at like having a live phone call because it can't back and forth quick enough, but it can do voice notes on WhatsApp, and they could not tell it wasn't me, which worried me.
Yeah. Pay me $1,000.
So maybe I will put the voice skin out for the next episode, and you need to tell me whether it's a voice skin or whether it's actually me before we do our next episode.
We can have a vote.
Yeah.
Participation. Audience participation. Vote.
Yeah. See who it is.
Like the other things like imaging images and photography and that kind of thing, because there's a thing I use, it's called Guru Shots. Basically you upload photos, people vote on them and that. Now I've always been thinking, like, what if someone just cheats and gets AI to generate it? Like, how, can you really tell the difference when you vote in on these things?
I think technology can tell the difference. I'm not sure we can. I think we like to think we can, but that's not necessarily the same thing.
Well, go ask a normal person on the street. What would you look for?
Yeah.
Oh, we can't even tell phishing links from real links. So.
No, exactly. Even if they end in .ru, you'll still click on them in the right period of time. So, I mean...
Yep. Yeah.
And here we were starting to complain about AI. But AI is coded by humans, so I suppose it's going to have the same issues, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. I do worry about that. Like, could AI be used to do bad things? Like, if an attacker be able to influence it and then give really bad information. Also, the people have blind trust. So there was a thing they did with secure coding, where they asked, I forget which chat engine it was. I think it was GPT, to write some programs.
Yeah.
They wrote the programs.
Yeah.
But they're insecure. And I can't correlate the secure part to writing that program. I knew like what insecure code looked like, but I didn't know how to use that to then write an application securely. So the problem that we would then see is people go, oh, this is written by Microsoft Pilot or whatever. I'm going to have full trust and faith in it, and it's going to be secure and everything like that. And away they go. And you have then insecure code going around the internet. People having blind trust in it. And then if attackers are able to manipulate the models, then they can even do even worse. So happy days.
Yeah, I think that comes down to the same problem. I think it's like we get lazy and we think we don't need to check and we don't need to validate anything. We can just trust and not verify. And it's the more technology we have, the more we become like that. And we just expect that something will flag it for us, you know?
I don't even think it's just being lazy. It's also lack of knowledge. So if you're someone who probably doesn't know much about development, you'll go, okay, great. Here's an app. Here's working. Guess this kind of the code. Shove it in something. You might not even need.
But you see, I don't know much about coding, and for me, if I did that, I'd probably call you up and be like, "Can you just check this for me? Is this okay?" And then you'd lie to me, and I'd deploy it, and then be hacked. But that aside, I would check.
Like I'm thinking a mom and pop shop, right? Some mom and pop shop where they probably don't know anyone technical.
That's true.
But they might just go, yeah, but this works. Hey, it works, great. Everything's fine. Why's my mouse doing weird things? Oh, why is that screen opening? Why are there naked people on my screen?
Yeah. Or maybe not, depending on who you are and what sort of mum and pop shop you run. Who knows?
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, it is interesting, like seeing all of that, and it's just the other problem is it's just everywhere. Like I try to get, well, I got a scam call from O2, promising me 40% off my phone bill. I'm like, oh, yeah, really? Okay. So I asked for the code that got sent to my phone. I've started like talking gibberish. And then as soon as I said, no, I'm not going to give it to you because I know this is a scam, I hang up. But the problem is that someone who doesn't know this would easily give that number away and then voila, own the account.
Yeah, and it happens a lot. And I think also like the more, I think even for us, you know, at our level, we're very acutely aware of this sort of stuff. But I think the people who think that they would spot this a mile off and they knew all of it, I think they are the most vulnerable in our community, because I acknowledge that in the right situation with the right link and the right text, yeah, I'd probably fall for that. If I was stressed, if I wasn't concentrating and it looked plausible, I would be very vulnerable to clicking on that or giving that information, right? But I think there's a lot of people who go, no, I would spot that a mile off. And it's like, well, if you have that kind of attitude, that sort of ego where you think you're never going to be caught out, I think you're the most likely to be caught out.
Yep. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. There was a part of me that was about to give the code, and then like my head kicked in and like, yeah, because as part of that phone call, they were going on about security, don't give information away, blah blah blah, and it sounded all like really legitimate. But then yeah, it's just like 40% off, something just not right, and then yeah. So it's again comes down to that human element, the easy to manipulate.
Yeah, and everyone's got their button. You've just got to work. They just got to work out where it is.
I know what yours is.
Apple products.
Yeah.
Sucker for Apple products, to be honest. Any attackers watching this, I will click on whatever links you want. Just send me some free Apple products.
Nation state. He has a new Apple device.
Oh, it's totally from China. This will be totally fine. The box seal is broken, but I'm pretty sure that's legit. I'll just.
Yeah. I'm charged this morning. Why is the battery low? I've not used it all day.
Why does 06365 keep saying that I'm trying to log in from Shanghai? That's so weird. That's probably fine. Allow.
What's the worst that could happen?
Just sharing with my Chinese friends. It's all good.
Sharing is caring.
Sharing is caring. Oh, I've got one more funny thing that I need to say, which you'll all laugh about. So, this is epic, right? I discovered, and I'll put the link onto Twitter later because I don't have it to hand, because I only just realized this. Mark Zuckerberg has a sister, right? Mark Zuckerberg's sister is an interesting individual. She has taken pop songs and she has turned them into cryptocurrency sales videos where she sings the pop songs and they are literally her dancing and singing to sell cryptocurrency. If you want to laugh, go onto YouTube and check them out because they are absolutely the best thing you'll watch this year, I guarantee you. The Zuckerbergs are just, they're just different. They're very different people.
Yeah,
there you go.
Interesting.
Not related to cybersecurity, but probably the first thing you guys will Google when you get off this. So there you go. I've given you something.
Yeah. And on that note. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for joining. Apologies about my audio. Hopefully it's better now that I'm actually closer to the mic. And yeah. Yeah, that's this one. And yeah,
we'll
hope you all have a good
drop
month.
Us some messages or comments or anything. If you want stuff to talk about that you want us to talk about, just let us know and we will add it to the list.
Yep. And please, those in China, please leave Lisa's 065 account alone. She's had enough troubles.
And please let me know on Twitter what your favorite Mark Zuckerberg sister video is.
Yeah,
That's the
do
real
that.
reason we're here.
Have a good one, all. Catch you later.
Bye.
Bye.